And of course, at the beginning, we were very disappointed that nobody asked, but in the meantime, I have understood the reason why people... And you know, it took the 50 years celebration, commemoration of the end of the war, when it became legitimate in England to talk about it. Because, you know, on the 50th anniversary of the end of the war, I was dragged from one television studio to the other. Suddenly people asked questions. And I remember Peter Snow, I could have murdered him. I was dragged into that studio and he said, "How did you know there were gas chambers in Auschwitz?" I said, "Because I was living 10 meters away from it." You know, I can ask these silly questions. But that was 50 years later. Suddenly it was okay to talk about it. Yeah.
Isn't that one of the reasons why you wrote the book in the first place, wasn't it?
No, I wrote the book in the first place because there was, you know, Belsen was such an unspeakable sight. There was, of course, we had photographic units there, and somebody there photographed everything and photographed these terrible scenes. And in the British sort of way, and because also the political situation was different then, it was decided not to show these terrible films to the Germans, who were really in a terrible state as well. And so all these reels of films that were taken were sunk in the Imperial War Museum and never shown and never seen. But one of the guys who took these photographs was his great ambition that they should come out of the archives, cut together, of course, to a normal length, and shown officially on television. And since there was no commentary on these films, or just these terrible pictures, I was phoned up and asked whether I would be prepared to make a commentary. I said yes, and we were 3 people doing it, 3 survivors. And this was eventually shown, cut together, and shown first in a restricted place where all the people who were there at the liberation of Belsen were invited. And I took my children there. And my sons said to me, "Mum, you never really told us anything." So I said, "Oh God, I will write something down. And it's really for my children." That's why it's called Inherit the Truth. I sort of wrote a letter to my children: "Dear children, please forgive me that I only come so late with all this, but I think you ought to inherit the truth." That's how this title came about. We're not a family, you know, people are different. You know, people didn't eat up their food, said, "Look, I was so hungry." It didn't somehow happen in our family. We are very busy catching up with years and years of stolen years. So, although my children say we always knew, of course, but we didn't know the details. So, yeah, this is what happened.
Yes, at the back.
Oh, me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, can I ask what happened in between being liberated?
Can you stand up a second? Sorry.
Yeah. Can I ask what happened between being liberated by the British in 45 and coming to England in 46? What did you do?
What did I do?
Yeah.
That's a good question. What did I do? Well, if you read my book, you will see that from the tremendous elation of being liberated, we slowly understood that we are, in fact, displaced persons. Where do we go? I was in Belsen till I left Belsen again with a little bit of forged papers after Christmas 45, and then I got stuck in Brussels for another 3 months. Yeah, what did I do? Well, when in Belsen, I mean, once I was liberated, I began to be a bit bored because I had nothing to do, so I drove everybody crazy to find me a cello. And they were desperately trying to find people who could speak English. I couldn't speak English, but my sister did. She went to a school where she learned English. So she became an interpreter for the British Army, and then my sister said to me, "You know, why don't you become an interpreter as well?" "No, I can't speak English, doesn't matter." So I think I must be the first interpreter who was an interpreter for a language he didn't speak. But English, so I was stuck in an office and I started copying texts, you know, military text. I can't type either, but copy the text. And you know, English is a language that picks itself up quite easily. And so I didn't take, I heard so much English, but I sort of understood it. When I came to England, I had to clean it up a little bit because I was learning my English in the army, you know. So certain things were not acceptable. But interestingly, I always thought that I can speak English, and I wrote my book in English, but my publishers started teaching me. I always thought English has no grammar. German has a lot of grammar. Der, die, das. German is so complicated, you know. And English is only the and only one. And I've learned a lot of English since I've written the book, I can tell you. And I get very impatient when I hear somebody on the BBC. How can you say that? It's not good English.
Joseph, one question.
Was it hard to write the book, or was it just to get it off your chest?
Was it hard to write the book, or was it just to get it off your chest? This is a pupil from St John Payne. Was it hard to write the book?
It was hard because, you know, it was like rolling a film backwards. And you know, in those days I was still playing, I was still professionally busy, so we spent a lot of time on airports waiting around, and I was always with some paper. So I wrote things, and some things I couldn't remember. I knew this wasn't absolutely right, so I would ring up my sister or ring up somebody from the orchestra. And yeah, it was like rolling back a film. And I finally made a book for each of my children. And the fact that I have so many letters in my book is, of course, peculiar, because when I was arrested, I was just standing there in my rags. He said, my eldest sister, the only one that emigrated, died at the birth of her second child, which is irony of fate, really, the only one that got out of Germany. And after her death, my brother-in-law sent me all the letters that we'd written to her in 1939, before the war, and then again afterwards. And so I have all these letters, you see, otherwise, how can I have all these letters in the book? Yeah. So eventually it became a book. I mean, I wrote it for my children. That was the end of the story for me. But then I was approached by the BBC, blah, blah, it's too long to go into now. Could we make a broadcast out of it? Okay, and then where can I buy the book? I had letters. Where can I send you a card? Because I ain't no book. So why don't I go to a publisher? And you know, I wasn't going to go to a publisher and said, would you like to publish my book? And then he said, it's not interesting enough. I said, if it was written in the sky that it should become a book, then a publisher would come to me, and this is exactly what happened. You know, I have no ambition as a writer, and I didn't think that my book, you know, so many books have been written. Anyway, my book is leading in its own life. It is even in Japanese. I don't know how many Japanese will read it. And yeah, so it's now a book.
Okay, yes, over here. Yes.
I'm 57 years of age, and I spoke to my father for the first time about a year ago. He was in one of the tanks that opened up the camps. And he told me there were a lot of displaced Jews who actually made homes in the camps afterwards because they didn't have anywhere to go. And he used to be invited on shows on a Friday night, he used to come into the camp. And I asked him a question. Why didn't we fight back? If we knew we were...
Why didn't we fight back?
Yes. No, I couldn't get an answer. I couldn't understand. You know, if you knew you were going to go and be killed, why wasn't there any uprisings or...
Don't get this wrong, there have been uprisings.
There were.
Of course, well, what about the ghetto uprising? There have been uprisings. There have even been, I think, I don't want to get it wrong now, so we were thinking, oh, there have been uprisings. But it always ended, every uprising, in the most tremendous loss of life. As, I mean, I was in Birkenau when the Sonderkommando chucked a German into the fire. Very brave act, but what was the aftermath of that? Hundreds of people got punished. But I mean, most of my talking is in Germany. I spoke to speech in German schools, and because it gets a question, if you were so many people standing on the ramp, and only perhaps 5 SS people, why didn't you fight back? I said, you know, it's so easy to fight back. If you've got a revolver in your pocket, what are we fighting with? What are we fighting with? You're completely... No, I'm overwhelmed. Okay, it has also happened that people say, you know, started screaming. It was useless. You were trapped. Sounds very nice to fight back. Well, it's easy with the... And of course, at first in Israel, when the people from the camps came back, they were not greeted like heroes. No, then why didn't you fight back? Because the young Israelis actually have weapons, but we didn't.
Can I just say also, there's some stuff in the books outside on display about resistance fighters. We've also, there's the film Defiance, about the Belsen brothers, who were a band of Jewish partisans that survived in the forests and did a lot of damage to the locally to the German war effort. And there was also uprisings in Sobibor, and there was Sombra Commando uprisings also in Birkenau as well. So there's a fair amount, and obviously there's the Warsaw Ghetto. There's a museum in Israel called the Ghetto Fighters Museum in the north of Kibbutz. There's also some literature on that out there as well. So yeah, there were lots of individual acts as well, diary acts. I mean, there's a little book there called the Children's Wartime Diaries, and one of them is a guy who unfortunately didn't survive from the Vilna Ghetto from Vilnius, Yitzhak Urashevsky, 14, 15-year-old kid, and he's written in his the diaries that he's written are in fact a resistance and a most amazing language. I think if he'd have lived, he would have been a poet laureate, absolutely. Anyhow, a couple more questions. We've got time for. Yes, the lady in the back there. Can you stand up though, because we can't hear you over there.
Is there any particular reason as to why it was Jewish people and not any other race or, you know, any other kind of...
No.
Is there any particular reason why it was Jewish people and not any other types of people?
It's a good question.
It was other types of people. I mean,
it was other types of people, but Jewish people are always very handy as scapegoats for everything that goes wrong. Listen, this is tradition, Jewish people. I don't quite know what we've done that is so terrible that we've been chosen. You know, if you read a book called The Pity of It All, it's by Elon, have you read it?
I must have gone,
yeah. Even I learned things that, you know, it is not that long ago in German, particularly about German Jews, that Jews were allowed to live in towns at all. For years and years, Jews had to go through the town gate, and there was written, for pigs and Jews. That's what it was like. You know, it was only the age of enlightenment when Moses Mendelssohn started, you have to sort of read a bit of history, started sort of that the Jews became acceptable to society. Why that is so, I don't know.
Well, the other thing, which is also very interesting, is if you go back a little bit further back than the Holocaust in Germany, you come to the Tsarist pogroms at the end of the 19th century, where Jews basically were being persecuted and forced out of their homes in the Pale of Settlement in Tsarist Russia. And there were two places that were at the top of the list of the Jews trying to flee. The first place, obviously, being America, the Golden State, where, you know, if you ask any child in the developing world today, you can live anywhere in the world wherever you want to go, I'm sure he would say America, and it was the same then. But the second place, for the Jews who didn't have quite as much resources or able to buy tickets to go to America, the second most favourite place the Jews wanted to go to, and did go to, was Germany. And why was it Germany? Because Germany was a liberal democracy. The Jews in Germany, at the turn of the 20th century, at the end of the 19th century, were emancipated, and they were able to study, they were able to be in universities. All the great Jewish authors and musicians, all those things, because Germany was a society that emancipated, was a liberal society. It was also, for instance, where the gay communities started. Also the gay liberation communities, and also Reformed Judaism started in Germany. All these Germany was an enlightened society, and that's what's one of the most puzzling issues of the Holocaust, from our perspective, is, you know, it happened, you know, under the it happened in when, you know, under the universities and the Christian churches of Europe. That's where it happened, and that's why, you know, going back to what Des was saying before about education, and, you know, what is the purpose of education? What are we educating for? Yes.
Did religion or religious beliefs of Judaism be of any help to you whilst in the concentration camp? Faith, God?
I must say the wrong thing.
Be honest and say
No.
no. Because I just opened it up and you talk, I just found a page and you talk about reading the Bible and reading quite a few
Yeah, I
things
was
in
reading the Bible
Yes.
because it was the only book we had in prison.
Yes.
And I must say I found it a fascinating book. And the Sermon of the Mount, I mean, I think it's wonderful stuff. It is wonderful stuff. Yeah, I was, that did help somehow. You know, I think I had a way of imagining myself outside myself. I was sort of trying to be an onlooker. Maybe reading the New Testament helped me there. It's possible, if what has happened hadn't happened, maybe I would have been so fascinated with the New Testament that I would have said, well, I think I'll become a Christian. But not everybody, but I've been asked, why didn't you become a Christian? Why didn't you have yourself baptized? I said, well, if I get myself baptized, I would be a baptized Jew. I'm quite happy to be Jewish. You know, it doesn't bother me. I'm me, I'm Jewish. Well, what's wrong with it, for God's sake? Yes, so, but that doesn't mean to say that I'm also interested in other religions, but I mean, unfortunately, more murder has been committed in the name of religion than anything else. So what's happening? You know?
Can I just add here that also, several years ago, we had the late Rabbi Hugo Green, also a survivor of Auschwitz, also speaking at schools here in Chelmsford, spoke at kegs. And he, just in contrast to Mrs. Wallfisch, he did survive with his faith intact. But I think that from the survivor community, I think I'm probably right in saying that the majority did not survive as Orthodox Jews. Although there were some, including the past Chief Rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Israel Lau, was a strictly Orthodox, black hat, and the whole works, was an Auschwitz survivor as well. Last question, perhaps Des, come on.
I just can't resist saying this, that I know Mr. Archbishop is about God and that, and we had other survivors to come into John Payne, and one of them was Trudy Levy. And I always remember a sixth former asking her and saying, where was God? And Trudy Levy said to the sixth former, I want to ask you, where were people? And I never forgot that. In fact, it urged me on to actually go back and study and do a master's. But this is the question I want to ask you. Did it take you a long time to go back to Germany? That's one bit of the question. And I know the effect you have on young people. What's the effect when you go back and speak to young people in Germany? So the first bit, did it take you a long time to go back to Germany?
Yeah, it took me a very long time because I swore never ever to put my foot on German soil again. To me that would have been like high treason somehow. Also, it would have been absolutely possible that I shake hands with somebody who killed my parents. Yeah, impossible. However, do stop me if I've said this before, because it's my second talk today. I want not to repeat myself. In the orchestra that I played with, the orchestra went a lot to Germany. Anita doesn't go to Germany, it doesn't matter, I get another cellist to go. But on the lists we used to get every month, it was written where we are working, and I might say Washington and Soltau and Celle. These are places very near Belsen. And when I saw Soltau and Celle, I suddenly thought I am going to go and have a look what has become of Belsen, because last time I saw Belsen, was really the end of it. So I phoned the orchestra and I said, don't get a shock, but I'm going to come with you this time. They were quite frightened. They thought I'd with a shotgun and I'll shoot everyone. I said, no, don't worry. I just want to see what has become of that camp. So we arrived in Celle, which is a place terribly pretty, you know, it's almost sickening, it's so pretty. And believe it or not, we were in the hall, we were supposed to do the concert, and then Notenständer, what is that in English? The desks hadn't come, you know, I can't think of the word. Yeah, the music stand. I thought, well, for God's sake, here in Germany, not everything is so absolutely. And so we were waiting for the music stands, and I was sitting there, and somebody must have said, "Lady, you sitting there." Somebody came up to me. Mind you, I had already discussed with one of my colleagues who happened to have a car there, because even from Celle to Belsen, you need a car. There is no public transport. Already discussed that the next day we will go and visit the camp. So a guy comes up to me and says, "I hear you want to go to the camp. Can I drive you there?" It was a German guy, of course, and I had no intention to have any conversation with anybody. I was going to see the camp. And my first reaction was to say, "No thanks, it's already discussed on getting there." And then I had a second thought. Now, it wasn't a very polite thing today, but I asked him how old he was. It's not the normal sort of thing. He said, "How old are you anyway?" He was born in 1946. Well, anybody born in 1946 does not have to tell me that he wasn't a Nazi, because he wasn't actually alive at the time. Because if ever you spoke to a German beforehand, before you said anything, he said, "We were all, you know, resistance." I said, "Oh, okay, oh, you're born in 46, okay, well, we'll go to the camp together." So I had 2 occasions to visit Belsen. I went with my colleagues, and Belsen then, I mean, it was so primitive, there was like a little garden hut, that was the museum, and I parted company with my colleagues, and, you know, it's the first time I was back, so we met again afterwards, and they said, "You know, everything is in German here. All the subtitles all in German. Should be in other languages as well." I said, "Really?" So I went into this place, the little hut, and there was nobody there. I was just going to complain, you see. But there was a notice that we are building a commemoration, a building, I can't think of the word now, and we are looking for help. Because in Germany there was complete silence for at least 25 years, and then young historians suddenly engaged themselves to do something when there was this big gap, and they're looking for survivors for help. So I wrote down the name of the guy, I said, "I will write a letter and say, look here, mate, you know, you should do something about the subtitles." Right. Next day I go with my new German acquaintance, again visiting the camp, and for me there are 2 camps. There is a camp which was burned down, and there is a camp, displaced persons, where we were after the war, after the liberation. Because I wanted to go in there to see the cemetery, because thousands of people died afterwards.